The crowd was in shock as Lily stood tall in the midst of the lavish wedding, every eye fixed on her as she delivered the most unexpected speech of the evening. Welcome to the family. If you love dramatic storytelling, join us by clicking subscribe and turning on notifications. It really helps us keep these videos coming. I want to see where our viewers are today. Comment your flag or city down below. Now, let's return to our main character. She wasn't a guest from the upper class, and the whispers started to get louder. But what Lily did next stunned everyone, including the billionaire who'd brought her here. David Hargrove had everything: a billion-dollar empire, a penthouse in the city, and a family legacy that would have made anyone envious. But when his ex-fiancée, Victoria, invited him to her wedding, he knew it wasn't going to be easy. Still, nothing prepared him for the decision he made next. Instead of showing up alone or with another high-society date, David brought Lily, the pizza delivery girl who'd made an unexpected impact on his life. As they stepped into the grand estate, all eyes turned to her. She wasn't supposed to belong, but as the night unfolded, she'd show everyone just how wrong they were. With Lily at his side, David stepped into the ornate venue, feeling the weight of 1,000 eyes on him. He had brought her here to prove a point, to show the world that he didn't care about the games of his past life. But what David didn't expect was how much the night would reveal about both of them, about what it meant to belong, to be seen, and to rise above the expectations of a world that only valued wealth and status. David Hargrove stood in the center of his sleek penthouse, looking out over the city skyline. The lights of Manhattan glittered below him, like diamonds scattered across a velvet cloth. Yet, despite the opulence surrounding him, his mind was far from calm. His ex-fiancée, Victoria, had invited him to her wedding, and the very thought of it was like a knife to his chest. He had no intention of showing up alone, nor did he want to bring a high-society date who would only add to the theatrics of it all. His thoughts drifted back to a few weeks ago when he had met Lily, a pizza delivery girl who had come to his mansion late one evening. She had arrived with no expectation of a tip or a smile from him, no need to impress him or fit into his world. She had simply been herself, humble, authentic, and unaffected by the wealth he took for granted. In a world full of masks and facades, Lily had stood out like a breath of fresh air. David needed her. Not because he was infatuated with her, but because she was the only person he could trust not to play the game. He needed someone who didn't care about his billions or his name, someone who would just show up and stand by him, without judgment. He picked up his phone and dialed her number. It took a moment before she answered, her voice calm and distant. "Lily?" he said. "I know this is a lot to ask, but I need you to come with me to a wedding. It's tomorrow, and it's complicated." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Lily was silent, probably processing the enormity of what he was asking. She had no idea what she was walking into. "Are you serious?" she asked cautiously. "Yes," he replied. "I need someone I can trust, someone real, someone who won't get caught up in all the nonsense." Lily hesitated again, clearly unsure. "I'm not exactly wedding material, David. I'm just a pizza girl." David's lips tugged into a smile, a rare one. "That's exactly why I need you there." The morning of the wedding arrived, and Lily stood before her bedroom mirror, hands trembling as she looked at the deep navy gown hanging on the back of her door. She had never worn anything like it in her life. The stylist, Marissa, had done her best to transform Lily into someone who could stand beside David without feeling like a fish out of water. The gown fit perfectly, its soft sheen reflecting the light from the chandelier above her. Lily ran her hands over the smooth fabric, her mind a whirl of emotions. She felt nervous, out of place. She had spent her entire life feeling invisible, unnoticed, and suddenly, here she was, about to attend a wedding at one of the most prestigious venues in the city. She wasn't sure she belonged, but there was no turning back now. She was here because David had chosen her, not because of her wealth, beauty, or status. No, David had chosen her because of something deeper, something that no one else in that world could offer. As Lily finished getting dressed, she ran a hand through her hair, remembering David's words, "When you walk in there, walk like you belong, because you do." David's confidence had been contagious, and for the first time that day, Lily took a deep breath and decided to trust him, to trust herself. David and Lily arrived at the grand wedding venue, a sprawling estate with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and impeccable gardens. As they entered the building, the entire room seemed to pause. The whispers started almost immediately. Who was the woman with David? She didn't fit in. She wasn't wearing the right label, the right brand. She wasn't supposed to be here. But Lily stood tall beside David, who remained calm and composed, as if this was all part of the plan. As they moved through the guests, Lily could feel the stares, the judgment, and the curiosity. It was as if she were a zoo animal on display, something out of place in a world of luxury. David seemed unfazed by the attention. His eyes were focused straight ahead, but there was a faint flicker of protectiveness in them as he looked at her. He had made his choice, and he wasn't going to let anyone make her feel small. Then Victoria appeared, the woman David had once been engaged to, the woman who had broken his heart. She was everything Lily wasn't, polished, perfect, and flawless in every way. Victoria's gaze flicked over David and Lily, her face freezing for a moment before she masked it with a practiced smile. "David," she said, her voice dripping with sweetness, "I didn't expect you to bring someone new." Her eyes narrowed slightly as they settled on Lily. David stood his ground. "You sent the invitation, didn't you?" His tone was cool, unbothered. Victoria's smile faltered slightly. She looked down at Lily, sizing her up. "I must say, David, your choice is unexpected." Lily felt the sting of Victoria's words, but she didn't shrink. Instead, she stood tall, ignoring the scrutiny from the others in the room. The evening wore on, and Lily quickly realized that the guests weren't just curious about her, they were actively judging her. Their whispered comments grew louder, more pointed, and she could feel herself being pushed to the edge. She had never been in a room so full of people who thought they were better than everyone else. One particularly rude guest made a passing comment to her, trying to make her feel small. "You're not even in the right league, are you?" he said, with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Lily's hands clenched at her sides, but before she could react, she felt David's hand on her back, steadying her. "Excuse me," he said, his voice cold and commanding, "but you have no right to speak to her like that." The room fell silent. For the first time, people began to realize that Lily wasn't just some hired hand. She wasn't a wallflower to be overlooked. She was a woman who had earned her place, even if they didn't understand how or why. As the evening progressed, the tension in the room continued to rise. At one point, a group of guests approached Lily, determined to corner her with questions. They wanted to know who she was, where she came from, and why David had brought her as his companion. Lily stood her ground, refusing to let them see her flinch. "I'm just a pizza girl," she said with a quiet dignity. "But sometimes the truth is more powerful than the facade." David's eyes softened as he watched Lily stand tall in the face of the cruelty around her. This wasn't just about a statement or a performance. This was about real strength. For the first time, he realized that Lily was more than just a companion for the night. She was someone who could show him what it meant to truly be free from the chains of wealth, status, and expectations. As the night wore on, Victoria became more desperate to regain control of the situation. She cornered Lily in the garden, trying to undermine her presence by insinuating that David had brought her as a way to make her jealous. Lily listened quietly, and when Victoria finished her barrage of insults, Lily replied calmly, "David didn't bring me here to make anyone jealous. He brought me because he values authenticity, something you clearly don't understand." David, having overheard the exchange, stepped forward. He didn't need to say much. His presence was enough to silence Victoria's biting remarks. The crowd that had once whispered with disdain now began to murmur with curiosity and respect. Lily had earned her place, not just as David's companion, but as a woman who stood her ground when the world tried to knock her down. Sometimes the world tells us we don't belong, but real strength comes from standing tall in the face of that challenge. If you believe in fighting for what's right, for the underdog, and for authenticity, subscribe now. Let's support stories that show the power of standing your ground. The wedding reception was in full swing, with guests laughing, sipping champagne, and making polite conversation. But the atmosphere had shifted. It wasn't just the stunning transformation of Lily from an outsider to someone who could hold her own. It was also the unexpected weight of the truth she had revealed. As the crowd continued to murmur, Lily found herself standing next to David, his hand on the small of her back, his presence a steady anchor in the sea of judgmental eyes. She had expected to feel small in such a grand space, but instead there was a strange comfort in knowing that her place here wasn't earned by wealth, power, or the right social circle. It had been earned through her authenticity and refusal to play the games that so many around her thrived on. David leaned in close, his voice soft but firm. "You've changed the entire atmosphere of this room, Lily. You've made them realize something they've been ignoring for too long." Lily looked up at him, unsure of what he meant. She glanced around the room, where the guests, who moments ago had been scrutinizing her every movement, were now looking at her with a mix of curiosity and, for the first time all night, respect. The whispers had stopped, replaced by tentative looks and measured conversations. It was as if they were beginning to see her for who she truly was, not just a maid or a lowly pizza delivery girl, but someone worthy of their attention and consideration. As the night stretched on, the spotlight subtly shifted. David and Lily found themselves in the center of a conversation with a few prominent guests. One of them, a man in a sharp suit, leaned forward with a slow smile. "I must admit, I underestimated you," he said to Lily, eyes scanning her with renewed interest. "It's not often we see someone so genuine in a place like this." Lily didn't flinch under his gaze. "Maybe that's the problem," she replied evenly. "We all get so caught up in appearances, we forget what really matters." Her words, simple yet powerful, hung in the air. David's eyes glinted with admiration, though he said nothing. It was clear he didn't need to speak for her anymore. But then, just as the crowd seemed to soften and accept Lily's presence, a familiar face appeared in the distance. Victoria, the woman David had been engaged to. She had watched every interaction between David and Lily like a hawk, her sharp eyes calculating every moment. When she finally walked over to them, her face was a picture of poise, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "David," she said smoothly, her tone sharp, "I see you've decided to bring someone unusual." Her eyes flicked to Lily, barely masking her disdain. David didn't even bat an eye. "I brought someone who's real," he replied coolly. "Someone who doesn't hide behind a facade like you." The air grew thick, tension rippling through the group. Lily could feel the weight of the moment. This wasn't just a confrontation. It was the final clash between a past David was trying to leave behind and a future that seemed to be unfolding right before them. She held her ground, not allowing herself to shrink under the pressure. Victoria's smile faltered for the first time. "You think you can simply replace me with this?" she asked, looking at Lily with a faint sneer. David didn't respond directly. Instead, he turned to Lily, offering her a rare, approving smile. "You're not a replacement," he said quietly. "You're someone who sees me for who I truly am, something Victoria never did." Sometimes, the people we think will always understand us are the very ones who try to tear us down. But when we stand strong and real, we see the truth. We don't need anyone's validation but our own. If you believe in being true to yourself no matter the cost, hit that subscribe button and join us as we support the power of authenticity. The evening reached its zenith when the speeches started. Guests took their places around the grand reception hall, the tension still thick in the air after the confrontation between David, Victoria, and Lily. The wedding had once been Victoria's show, her chance to remind everyone of her place in the world. But now, it felt like the spotlight was shifting, and David and Lily were the ones standing in its glow. Victoria, now wed to her political heir, stood at the head table, her hand resting possessively on her new husband's arm. The gleaming crystal glass in front of her caught the light, adding to her already polished aura. Yet, as she looked toward David and Lily, there was an unmistakable crack in her poised demeanor. She had spent years living a life of privilege, and now, standing next to David in that moment, she was faced with a hard truth. Her world was no longer one that held all the power. At the height of the evening, as David stood to make a toast, a sense of quiet tension rippled through the room. Everyone was waiting for something, and David knew it. He was about to shatter the illusion of the perfect, curated world that Victoria and her circle had built for themselves. "Ladies and gentlemen," David began, his voice steady but filled with a quiet strength, "I've spent my life in a world that measures success by wealth, status, and who you know. But I've come to realize that it's all a game, and I'm tired of playing." Lily stood beside him, a small but resolute figure, her presence grounding him as he spoke. He paused, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. "Tonight, I stand with someone who sees beyond all of that, someone who doesn't play the game because she doesn't need to. Lily, this evening is about you as much as it is about anyone else in this room. You've shown me what it means to be real, to be genuine, and for that, I'm truly grateful." The silence that followed was deafening. The guests, once so sure of their superiority, suddenly seemed unsure. Victoria's face flushed with a mixture of disbelief and anger, and the rest of the crowd shifted uncomfortably, as if they were suddenly aware that the game had changed. David raised his glass, his voice clear and strong. "Here's to authenticity, to finding what really matters, and to standing up for what's right, even when the world tells you it's wrong." The final toast echoed across the hall, and in that moment, Lily realized something profound. She hadn't just been the woman who walked beside David that night. She had become part of his story, part of his journey toward understanding what truly mattered. And for the first time, she felt like she truly belonged. As the reception continued, guests slowly approached, some offering congratulations, others simply offering their own quiet respect. It was a turning point, for David, for Lily, and for everyone who had witnessed the night unfold. As the evening drew to a close, David turned to Lily, his voice quieter now, filled with something more than just appreciation. "Thank you," he said simply. "You've taught me more than anyone else ever could." Lily, no longer the pizza girl, but a woman who had stood her ground, smiled softly. "No, David, you taught me something too. It's not about where you come from or who you're with. It's about who you are and what you stand for." They stood together, side by side, no longer just a billionaire and his companion, but two people who had shared something real, something authentic, and the world around them would never be the same. If you believe that it's time to stand for what's real, to stop playing games and start being who you are meant to be, hit that subscribe button. Share this journey with us, and let's continue to celebrate authenticity in a world that desperately needs it.